her eyes filled with a mixture of anger and desperation. It's too late, Amina. I can't control it anymore. Amina reached out, grabbing Flora's arms. You can! You are stronger than this! Don't let the rain spirit control you! But Flora shook her head, tears mixing with the rain. I don't know how! The village elders, led by Mabinty, arrived at the school, their faces grim. They had seen the storms from afar and knew that Flora's power had spiraled out of control. Mabinty approached Flora, her voice calm but firm. Flora, you must listen. The rain spirits are feeding off your emotions. You have to let go. Release them, or they will destroy everything. Flora looked at Mabati, her heart pounding. But how? I don't know how to stop them. Mabati took a deep breath. You must find a balance within yourself, Flora. Only then will the rain spirits release their hold on you. Flora stood frozen, the storm raging around her as Mabati words echoed in her mind. Balance? How could she find balance when her heart was filled with so much anger and pain? The rain spirits were a part of her now, a manifestation of all the emotions she had tried to suppress. But deep down, Flora knew Mabati was right. She had allowed her power to consume her, and now she had to face the consequences. With trembling hands, Flora closed her eyes, trying to quiet the storm within her. The rain spirit's voices grew louder, resisting her attempt to calm down. As Flora struggled to regain control, the rain spirit pushed back, their presence overwhelming. She felt as though they were drowning in their power, their demands. They wanted chaos, destruction, vengeance, but deep down, Flora didn't want that. Not anymore. She thought of the people she had hurt, the friends she had lost, and the damage she had caused to the people and the village. She couldn't let it continue. With a deep breath and with all the strength she had left, she reached deep inside herself. She focused on the memories of what had once brought her joy before the bullying, before the storm. She thought of her family, the laughter she used to share with Amina, the beauty of the rain when it was gentle and nourishing. Slowly, the anger within her began to wane, and she felt a flicker of hope. I won't let this power define me, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the storm. With a trembling hand, she raised her arms to the sky. Enough! The rain spirits, however, were not so easily silenced. Flora could feel them resisting, pushing back against her will, demanding more destruction. The storm swelled violently around her, as if testing her resolve. But this time, Flora didn't falter. She grounded herself, drawing on the wisdom Mabati had shared. She focused on her balance, on harmony, and slowly the power of the spirit began to recede. The rain, once a torrential downpour, began to soften. The winds died down, and the oppressive darkness of the sky lightened. It wasn't over yet, but Flora could feel the shift. As the storms began to calm, the students and teachers emerged from their hiding places, cautiously watching Flora from a distance. The school grounds, once flooded and torn apart by the storm, were now eerily quiet. Musa, standing with his remaining gang members, watched in disbelief. This wasn't the outcome he had expected. He had wanted to see Flora crumble, to be punished for her misuse of power, but instead, she seemed to be pulling herself back from the edge. The village elders, who had been watching the entire scene unfold, nodded in approval. Mabinty, standing at the edge of the schoolyard, gave a small, proud smile. With one final effort, Flora commanded the rain spirit to return to the skies. She could feel them resisting, but this time she held firm. You've done enough, she whispered. Slowly, the storm clouds began to part, and the beams of sunlight pierced through the gloom. The rain tapered off to a gentle drizzle, and then finally it stopped altogether. The wind, once howling with fury, began to soft breeze. Flora stood alone in the schoolyard, drenched and exhausted but victorious. She had done it. She had regained control. The rain spirits, though still present, were no longer dictating for her. The school was left in a state of disarray. Flooded classrooms, broken windows, and uprooted trees marked the landscape, a testament to the destruction of Flora's power at cost. The students were cautious around her, unsure of how to approach the girl who had once been a victim but had become something far more powerful and dangerous. Flora, exhausted and emotionally drained, sat alone in the corner of the courtyard. She could feel the weight of the stairs, their fear, and also their relief. The storm has passed, and with this, a sense of calm had returned. But Flora knew the repercussions of her actions were far from over. Musa, who had once been the terror of the school, now stood in silence. He could no longer deny Flora's power. His gang had shrunk to just a handful of boys, all of them now too afraid to challenge her. His pride had been shattered, and he no longer held the authority he once did. For the first time, Musa felt powerless. As he watched Flora sitting alone, he realized that this wasn't just a victory. It was the end of the reign of the school's bully. The storm had washed away more than just the school grounds. It had washed away his control. After the storm cleared, Amina knew she had to face Flora. With the heart pounding in her chest, she approached her former friend, her shoes squishing in the muddy grass as she walked across the courtyard. Flora, she called out softly. Flora looked up, her eyes filled with a mixture of exhaustion and sadness. Amina swallowed hard. I'm sorry. I never should have betrayed you. I was scared and I didn't know how to handle what I saw. But that doesn't excuse what I did. For a moment, there was a silence. Then Flora spoke, her voice quiet but steady. You hurt me, Amina, but I understand why you did it. Flora's words surprised Amina. She had expected anger, perhaps even another storm, but instead there was a quiet acceptance. I know I've made mistakes too, Flora continued. I let my power control me and I hurt people. I didn't want this, any of it, but I'm trying to make it right. Amina nodded, tears welling in her eyes. Can we start over? She asked. Flora considered the question, her mind swelling with memories of their friendship and the betrayal they had followed. After a long pause, she finally nodded. Maybe, but things will never be the same. The village elders gathered once again, this time to discuss the future of Flora and her place in the community. They had seen the destruction caused by her power, but they had also seen the effort she made to regain control. Mabinty stood before the council, her voice calm but firm. Flora is not a danger to us. Not anymore. She has learned the lesson we all must learn. The power without a balance is destructive. She deserves a second chance, but she must be guided. The elders murmured among themselves, weighing Mabinty's words. Finally, they nodded in agreement. Flora must be given the chance to atone for her mistakes, but would not walk this path alone. With the elders' decision, Flora was given a new role within the village. She would work closely with Mabinty, learning how to harness her powers responsibly and in harmony with the natural world. It was a slow process, but Flora was determined. She wanted to make amends for the chaos she had caused, not just in the village, but in the lives of her classmates. The school, still recovering from storm's aftermath, began to rebuild, and so did Flora. Though the rain spirit still whispered in her dreams, they no longer held the same control over her. She was learning, step by step, to master herself. As the days passed, the school began to heal, both physically and emotionally. Students and teachers worked together to repair the damage from the storm, mending the broken windows, clearing the flooded classrooms, and replanting the trees in the courtyard. Flora, too, joined in the effort, working alongside her classmates in a show of unity. Though there were still whispers about her powers, and some students remained wary of her, the atmosphere began to shift. Flora's willingness to help and her quiet determination to make things right started to change how people saw her. Slowly, the fear that had gripped the school began to fade. Musa, once the biggest bully in the school, found himself in an unfamiliar position. His former gang has disbanded, and the respect he had once commanded was gone. He kept his distance from Flora, still unsure of how to approach her. But one day, while walking in the courtyard, their paths crossed. For a moment, they stood in awkward silence, the weight of their shared history hanging between them. Finally, Musa cleared his throat. I was wrong about you, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Flora looked at him, surprised by his words. I was wrong too, she replied. But we can't change the past, only the future. With time, the atmosphere at the school began to shift. The bullying that had once been rampant was no longer a constant presence. Musa, once feared by everyone, had taken a step back, no longer the leader of a gang of tormentors. Amina and Flora slowly rekindled their friendship, though it was difficult now, but on a new understanding of each other. Flora had learned to control her powers, but more importantly, she had learned the importance of balance and the dangers of letting emotions rule her. The school, once a place of torment for Flora, had become a place of healing. Sitting under the large tree in the courtyard, Flora reflected on everything that had happened, the storms, the betrayals, the fear. All of it had shaped her into who she was now. She no longer saw her powers as a curse, but as a gift that needed careful guidance. Mabinty had taught her the true power came from within, from understanding herself and the world around her. The rain spirits, once wild and uncontrollable, now moved into harmony with her. The whispers softer, less demanding. Flora smiled, knowing that though the journey had been difficult, she had emerged stronger. One evening, as Flora and Mabati sat by the river, Mabati shared one final piece of wisdom. Power is not something to be feared, Flora, but it is something to be respected. The spirits, whether they be of the rain, the earth, or the wind, do not seek control. They seek balance. As long as you understand this, you will always have control, even when it feels like everything is falling apart. Flora listened carefully to Mabati's words, letting them sink in. She had learned so much from her, not just about the spirits, but about herself. I thought power would give me everything I wanted, Flora said quietly, but I didn't realize how much responsibility came with it. Mabati nodded. Power without wisdom leads to chaos. You've walked a difficult path, Flora, but you've learned from your mistakes. That is the true mark of strength. As the weeks passed, Flora continued to train under Mabati's guidance, learning how to better communicate with the rain spirit and maintain balance in the natural world. But one day, The spirits warned her of a new danger. The rain began to fall in an unusual pattern, sporadic bursts of downpour followed by long periods of silence. The sky, once clear and blue, grew ominously dark. Flora could feel something was wrong. It's different this time, she muttered, standing by the window of her classroom. The spirits are restless. Word spread quickly among the students, and soon the entire school was on edge once again. Mabinty confirmed Flora's worst fears. This imbalance is not caused by you, she said solemnly. This is something darker at play, something beyond the spirit you commanded. Flora's heart raced. She had just started to feel in control again, but now a new challenge looked on the horizon. What do I do? She asked, trying to keep the fear out of her voice. Mabinty placed a reassuring hand on Flora's shoulder. You are not alone in this. We'll face it together, but you must trust your ability. This time, the balance of the entire village depends on it. The entire village felt the shift in the air as the skies darkened, casting low shadows over the landscape. The wind howled through the streets, and people began to take shelter, fearing another catastrophic storm. But this was different from the last time. Flora could feel it in her bones. The rain spirits were not behind this. They were as confused as she was. This is something more ancient, Mabinty explained, her voice grave, something we have not encountered in generations. Flora could sense the weight of Mabinty's words. She wasn't just dealing with a natural imbalance. There was an outside force threatening to unravel everything. Flora stood at the edge of the village, her heart pounding in her chest as the storm clouds gathered on the horizon. She could feel the presence of something powerful, something that didn't belong. The rain spirits were with her, but they were existent, as if sensing the magnitude of what lay ahead. This is your final test, Mabinty said softly, standing beside her. If you can restore balance now, you will truly understand the full depth of your power. Flora took a deep breath, steadying herself. She had made mistakes before, but this time she would not let fear control her. This time she would fight for balance, not just for herself, but for the entire village. As the storm approached, Flora raised her hands to the sky, feeling the power surge through her. The rain spirit swirled around her, ready to obey her command. She closed her eyes and reached out, not just to the spirit, but to the force behind the storm. It was dark, twisted, but Flora could sense its source. She called upon every lesson Mabinty had taught her, every moment of growth she had experienced, and in that moment she found her center. She had been a victim, a terror, and now a protector. With a surge of power, Flora sent out a wave of energy, pushing back against the storm. The dark force resisted, but Flora held firm, drawing more strength from the rain spirits, from Mabinty, from the village itself. Slowly, the storm began to break apart, the clouds dissipating and the wind drying down. The force that had threatened her home was gone, vanished by her determination and her newfound mastery over her abilities. Flora stood in the quiet aftermath, rain softly falling around her, but this time it was gentle, nourishing. She had passed the final test. Mabinty smiled at her, proud. You did it, Flora. You've brought balance. Flora smiled back, feeling a sense of peace she hadn't felt in a long time. She had learned to control the storm within, and with that, she had saved them all.